everyone, thank you for joining us this afternoon. We're going to be doing some chalk pastel techniques today. So if you do want to join along with us today, all we're using is just some basic pastel, chalk pastels. And we are going to use some black paper just because they show up really nicely on the black paper. If you have white paper, that's absolutely fine, you can do that too. So I'm just going to start by showing you a few different mark making techniques that you can use. So I'm going to start with a slightly lighter colour. And some of the chalk pastels are sort of slightly more round, some are square. So this kind of can be used to make different marks as well. Square ones are quite good, sort of a dragging technique where you can actually just use the flat side to sort of drag and make marks. You can you can do it with round ones as well. Doesn't make too much difference. You can also layer the colours up a bit as well. So you can have, say, yellow there. If you wanted to lighten it or darken it, you can put colour over the top, sort of layer it up if you want to. And this is also a blending technique as well. So if you overlap the colours, you kind of get a nice blend between them all as well. So you can just use these for drawing as well. Obviously it depends on the point and how much you've used them. Some have more of a point than others. Also, if you break them, you've got a slightly sharper point there you can use for finer lines too. You can use cross hatching techniques as well. So this can be good for shading. You can also use a sort of dotted technique which can be really good for things like grass. Do it a bit further down here so you can see. So you're just making little marks, almost little dashes rather than dots. And you can use the darker colours for shadows. You can go in with that first and then go in with slightly lighter colour on top. You're just making little dash marks, and it is quite good, yeah, for things like grass. You can just keep going in with different colours. If you want to add some white in there as a little highlight, you can do. Obviously these do get quite dusty, so you can blow off any excess afterwards rather than kind of wiping it, obviously, because you'll wipe it off the page. So the next one I'm going to show you, similar to this, you can use the flat side to make straight lines. You can also make wavy lines. Sort of, depending on how hard you press, you get different techniques, different sort of levels of opacity. Just turn the paper around. So, showing you a sort of similar blending technique to the dots. You can use kind of dashed lines, so slightly longer lines. You can do them thin or thick, and then you can kind of go down and overlap those. And you see you start to get a slight blend in there, and you just sort of continue with the darkest colour down to the lightest colour. And that's a different sort of blend. This sort of thing is quite good for things like hair. And then another blending technique you can do involves using your fingers. So a lot of chalk pastel techniques that I do does involve getting quite messy hands, as you can see, which is part of the fun. So what you can do is just apply it quite heavily. Sunset colours, so I'm going to do red, orange and yellow, and just kind of marking them down quite heavily next to each other. And then you just want to pick a finger to use that's maybe slightly cleaner. Start with the darkest side and just using sort of circular motions or whatever feels comfortable to you, just kind of move it all across. And you will find once you start, especially on black paper, once you start kind of blending it, it does slightly dull, so you might want to keep adding more over the top and keep blending it until you sort of get your desired effect or brightness. You can see once you've sort of started to do it a few times, it does get a little bit brighter. You don't want to lose that vibrancy. So you can see they do blend together really, really nicely. You can, obviously, if you're doing different colours, try to just sort of pick a finger that's not got a colour on it first, because sometimes you can you can transfer the colours. So you can you can start to see how really lovely and vibrant these look on the black paper. You still get a really nice effect on white paper, but if you can get hold of any black paper, it really does make a big difference. And you can start to sort of blend these out and feather them out a bit as well. They're quite quick to work with, it doesn't take too long to blend them. So once we've done some different techniques, you can kind of start to see what things you can create. Things like landscapes and sunsets are really, really great. Seascapes as well. Clouds. Anything that's quite sort of atmospheric, you can get a really lovely effect from it. So I'm going to have a go at putting some of the techniques to use and see if we can do a bit of a sort of cloudy seascape. So if you don't have a set of the chalk pastels at home, They are relatively cheap. You can get them around about £10. Obviously, if you want to spend a bit more and get a slightly nicer set, you can do. But if you are on a budget, you can get them relatively cheap. So I'm sort of going to look at doing, like I say, a sort of water cloud landscape. So this is going to be more of a sort of blended landscape. So I'm not concentrating too much on it being perfectly neat at first, because I'm just getting the colour down and then I'm going to try and blend it out. So I'm using the blue to go in over the top. And you do want to apply it quite liberally, just so you've got it quite vibrant enough. So sort of just blending it out. Just sort of use the tip of your finger just to blend it out. As I say, if you kind of notice that there is sections where it's slightly more see-through and you want a bit more colour in there, you can just keep going over the top and adding a bit more in if you want to. Just going to add some darker blue as well, just to give some shadow details. So this is the cloud that we're putting in now. And you can sort of use your blending technique to sort of try and mimic the shape of what you want. So obviously using, when you're blending, is going to make it look a bit more like a cloud. So you start to sort of get that fluffiness coming in, and then you can start adding a bit more detail with the white highlight. And just trying to keep that circular blending so you get that nice kind of fluffy. And you can go in over some of the darker colours as well. You can layer it up as much as you like. It's very sort of similar to something like acrylic paint. You know, you don't have to wait for anything to dry. You can just go straight back in and layer it up and blend it through again. It's kind of easy to cover up mistakes. And then what we're going to try and do underneath is use some darker colours. To create our water. And maybe just pop a bit of black in here as well. So Not blending any of this out yet, we're just applying it. And then we're going to put the white down the centre as the highlight with a bit of the lighter blue as well. So it's all about trying to figure out where your kind of highlights and shadows are. And if you are able to figure that out, you can sort of go back in, put some highlights in, put some low lights in. And in terms of blending this, we're just going to go straight across. I'm going to blend it all together. Just try not to blend it too much. You kind of want that nice streaky water effect. And then I'm just going to go in right down this very centre. Again, just using a clean finger, just kind of lightly blending out that highlight in the centre. So where you've got the white line at the bottom here, by the clouds, you want to sort of blend. And we're just going to finish off by adding a few more highlights into the clouds. So that's the kind of effect that you can create. Obviously, because it's on black paper, you don't need to worry too much about background or anything. It's just kind of creates, especially doing something that's sort of a nighttime effect, kind of creates its own black background, so you don't need to worry too much about putting that in. And then once you're happy with all of the highlights, just get rid of all the excess, and you can either just leave it like this, or you can spray it down. You can use things like hairspray, or you can get specific sprays that actually keep the pastel in place so it doesn't all just come off the page. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed today's demonstration. There's a few different techniques. I'll just show you again. These are a few of the ones that we've done. And this is just using chalk pastels. So a few from earlier as well. And then we've sort of combined those techniques, or some of those techniques, to create this cloudy seascape. And if you do want to have a go at home, please do, and please send us in some of the work that you do. We'd love to see some of the things you've been doing at home. And we'll see you again next week. Thank you.